My name is Malik Harris, and 3 days after my wealthy white wife publicly humiliated me at a charity gala, calling me a burden she needed to move on from in front of hundreds of elite guests, I received a phone call that changed everything. The trustee's voice was calm as he told me my grandfather had passed away, which meant the $300 million inheritance I'd been hiding from everyone would vest immediately. While Sloane was celebrating her freedom from the poor mechanic who wasn't good enough for her world, she had no idea that the man she'd just destroyed was about to become one of the richest people in the city. 2 years later, when her perfect new life collapsed and she came crawling back, broke and desperate, I had to choose between the sweetest revenge and something far more powerful. But what I did next shocked everyone, including myself. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, hit that subscribe button and tell me what country you're from, because this story about hidden wealth, devastating betrayal, and the ultimate payback is just getting started. The crystal chandelier above us threw light across the room like broken promises. I stood next to Sloane at the Whitaker Foundation anniversary party, my hand resting on the small of her back through her silver dress. The fabric felt expensive under my palm. Everything here did. Malik, darling, you look adequate tonight. Evelyn Whitaker smiled at me with teeth sharp enough to cut glass. Her eyes swept over my charcoal suit, the best one I owned, pressed twice this morning. How thoughtful of you to make an effort. I nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Whitaker. The words tasted like pennies in my mouth, but I kept my face calm. 3 years of dating Sloane had taught me that much. Keep quiet. Don't make waves. Let the comments roll off like rain on a windshield. Sloane's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. Mother, please. What? I was being kind. Evelyn's laugh tinkled like wind chimes in a storm. She glided away toward a cluster of women wearing jewelry that could pay my rent for a year. The ballroom buzzed with conversations about charity boards and summer homes in the Hamptons. Men in $1,000 suits discussed merger deals while their wives planned galas for next season. I recognized some faces from the society pages: judges, city council members, old money families who'd been running this town for generations. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. I took one and watched the bubbles rise to the surface, thinking about how I'd rather be under the hood of a '98 Camry right now. At least car problems had solutions. You're quiet tonight, Sloane murmured beside me. Just listening. I took a small sip of champagne. It tasted like expensive nothing. She nodded but didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the room, tracking conversations and glances like a chess player studying the board. This was her world. These people, this money, these careful social dances I'd never learned the steps to. Rome had warned me about tonight. Man, why are you putting yourself through this? My best friend and business partner had asked while we closed the shop earlier. You know how they look at you in there. I knew. But I loved Sloane. Had for 3 years, since she'd walked into Harris Auto Repair with a flat tire and a smile that made me forget my own name. She was smart and funny when we were alone. She'd sit on my couch eating takeout Chinese food and laugh at my terrible jokes. Those moments felt real in a way nothing else in my life did. This, the parties, the charity events, the dinners with her parents. This felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit. But I did it because she asked me to, because I thought it mattered to her. The crowd began to quiet as Evelyn stepped up to the small stage at the front of the room. She tapped her champagne glass with a silver spoon, the sound ringing out like a bell. Friends, family, distinguished guests, she began, her voice carrying easily across the room. 25 years ago, my late husband Charles and I started this foundation with a simple goal: to give back to our community. Tonight, we celebrate not just our anniversary, but the next generation taking the reins. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I clapped too, though my hands felt heavy. Sloan has been the heart of our youth programs for the past year, Evelyn continued, beaming at her daughter. And tonight, she has something special to share with all of you. My stomach dropped. Sloan hadn't mentioned any announcement. She squeezed my hand once, quick and nervous, then let go and walked toward the stage. She looked beautiful up there under the lights. Her blonde hair caught the glow, and her smile was perfect and practiced. But something was wrong. Her shoulders were too straight, her movements too careful. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Sloane began, her voice steady but missing its usual warmth. "The foundation has always been about moving forward, about progress, and sometimes that means making difficult decisions." A murmur went through the crowd. I felt eyes turning toward me, though I couldn't say why. "I've been thinking a lot about what it means to build something lasting," Sloane continued, "about partnerships that help rather than hold you back, about surrounding yourself with people who share your vision for the future." My chest tightened. The champagne glass felt slippery in my palm. "I've realized that I've been carrying weight that isn't mine to bear," she said, her gaze finding mine across the room. "Supporting someone who won't rise to meet the challenge, and that's not fair to either of us." The room went dead quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat over the soft jazz music playing in the background. "So, I'm announcing tonight that I'm moving on from that burden," Sloane finished, her chin lifted high. "I'm choosing to surround myself with people who match my ambition and my future." Someone in the crowd let out a low whistle. I heard a man near the bar mutter, "About time she dumped the grease monkey." Another voice, louder, "Girl's finally coming to her senses." The words hit like fists, but I kept my face neutral. 3 years of practice had taught me how to take a punch without showing it. Sloane was still looking at me from the stage, her expression unreadable. Evelyn stepped up beside her daughter, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "We're so proud of Sloane for making these mature decisions," she announced to the crowd. "Now, let's toast to new beginnings." Glasses raised around the room. People turned to each other with excited whispers, the energy in the room crackling with gossip. I stood frozen in the middle of it all, still holding my untouched champagne. A woman near me leaned toward her friend. I always wondered what she saw in him. Sweet enough, I suppose, but honestly, what did she expect? "Different worlds," her friend agreed with a knowing nod. "Oil and water." My hands started to shake. Not from anger. I'd learned to control that long ago. From something deeper. Something that felt like drowning while everyone around you kept breathing. I set my glass down on a nearby table without drinking from it. The crystal made a soft click against the white tablecloth. Then, I turned and walked toward the exit, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. "Malik!" Sloane's voice called behind me, but I didn't stop. The doorman nodded as I passed. "Have a good evening, sir." "You too," I managed. The night air hit my face like cold water. December in the city was bitter, but it felt better than the suffocating warmth inside. I stood on the sidewalk outside the hotel, watching my breath cloud in the cold. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ambulance, maybe police. The sound of a city that never stopped moving, never stopped breaking and healing and breaking again. I listened to it and tried to remember how to breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Rome. "How's the fancy party?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then put the phone back in my pocket without answering. The hotel's golden light spilled out onto the sidewalk through tall windows, but I stayed in the shadows. A valet jogged past me toward a black Mercedes that had just pulled up. Rich people coming and going, their lives running on schedules I'd never understand. I thought about going back inside to get my coat, then decided against it. The cold felt right. I walked 6 blocks to where I'd parked my pickup truck. The engine turned over on the second try, and I sat there for a moment listening to it rumble. Reliable, honest, It ran because I kept it running, because I understood how all the pieces fit together. Unlike everything else in my life, the fluorescent lights in Harris Auto Repair hummed overhead as I unlocked the front door. The familiar smell hit me. Motor, oil, rubber, and the coffee Rome always left brewing too long. It was past 10 on a Friday night, but this place felt more like home than my apartment ever did. I flipped on the lights and walked back to the office. The radio was still on from earlier, playing old soul music low and static filled. Rome must have forgotten to turn it off before he left. I sat down at the metal desk covered with invoices and parts catalogs. The chair creaked under my weight, same as it had for the past 5 years since Rome and I bought this place. We'd painted over the rust spots and fixed the bay doors ourselves, but you could still see where the previous owner had let things fall apart. My phone rang. Rome's name lit up the screen. "You left the coffee pot on again," I said instead of hello. "Man, forget the coffee." His voice was tight with anger. "Tessa called me, said she saw something on social media about you and Sloane. What happened?" I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling tiles with their water stains shaped like continents. "She broke up with me. At the party. In front of everyone." "She what?" Rome's voice went up an octave. "In public? At some fancy event? Made a speech about it. About how she was done carrying dead weight." Rome was quiet for a moment. I could hear him breathing hard, the way he did when he was trying not to explode. "I'm coming over there. You don't need to. I'm already in my car." The line went dead. I set the phone down and rubbed my face with my hands. The taste of humiliation was still thick in my mouth, mixing with the anger I was trying so hard to keep buried. 15 minutes later, Rome walked through the front door carrying 2 bags from Chen's kitchen. The smell of fried rice and orange chicken filled the small office. "Figured you hadn't eaten," he said, setting the food down on the desk. He was wearing his good jeans and a button-down shirt. He'd been out somewhere when Tessa called. "Thanks." I opened one of the containers but didn't take a bite. Rome pulled up the plastic chair from the corner and sat down across from me. He was 31, a year older than me, built like a linebacker but gentle unless someone he cared about got hurt. Then he turned into something altogether different. "Tell me what happened," he said. So I did. I told him about Evelyn's comments, about Sloane's speech, about the whispers and looks. Rome listened without interrupting, but I could see his jaw getting tighter with every detail. 3 years, he said when I finished. 3 years of you bending over backward for that family, going to their parties, taking their insults, letting them treat you like the help. And this is how she repays you? Rome. No, man. No excuses. Not tonight. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "You know what kills me? You're better than any of those people. You got more honor in your pinky finger than that whole room combined. But they can't see it because all they see is the color of your skin and the dirt under your fingernails." I picked up a piece of chicken with the plastic fork, then put it down again. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was holding her back. "Are you serious right now?" Rome stood up so fast his chair scraped against the concrete floor. "Holding her back from what? A life of charity galas and country club gossip? You think that's living? She's got opportunities I can't give her." "What opportunities? To marry some trust fund baby who'll treat her like a trophy? To spend her life worrying about what other people think?" He shook his head. "That's not opportunities, Malik. That's prison." I knew he was right. Part of me had always known, but it was easier to blame myself than to admit that the woman I loved had chosen status over love, had chosen the approval of people who would never accept me over the man who would have given her everything. "There's something I need to tell you," I said quietly. Rome sat back down. "What?" I looked at my hands, calloused from years of working with tools and engines, honest hands that had built something from nothing. Remember when I told you my grandfather left me some money in a trust? Yeah, you said it vested when you turned 30. That's still, he counted in his head, 10 months away. It was. I met his eyes. The trust was set up to vest when I turned 30 or when my grandfather died, whichever came first. Rome went very still. Malik, when did your grandfather pass? 2 weeks ago. I got the call the day after Thanksgiving. The funeral was last weekend in Detroit. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd want me to tell Sloan, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. Rome was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. How much money are we talking about here? I took a deep breath. $300 million. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Rome's mouth fell open, then snapped shut. He stood up again, paced to the door, turned around, and came back. 300. He couldn't finish the sentence. My great-grandfather started buying real estate in Detroit in the 30s when nobody wanted it. Grandfather expanded into other cities, other investments, set up the trust to keep the family wealth intact, but only for family members who proved they could work for a living. That's why you had to stay employed until you turned 30. Right? Grandfather wanted to make sure his money went to someone who understood the value of work, not just inheritance. Rome sat down hard in his chair. So, right now, tonight, after that woman just humiliated you in front of half the city's elite, you're sitting on enough money to buy and sell most of them? The papers aren't signed yet, but yeah. And you didn't tell her. You didn't use it to fight back, to show them all up, to make them eat their words. No. Why the hell not? I finally took a bite of the orange chicken. It was cold now, but it still tasted better than anything at that party had. Because if I'd told her about the money, I would never have known if she loved me or my bank account, and now I know. Rome leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly. The universe just handed you payback, man, on a silver platter. You could buy that hotel where the party was tonight. You could buy her mother's foundation. You could make them all pay for what they did to you. I could, I agreed, but I won't. Why not? I thought about the question, about Sloane's face when she announced our breakup, about the way the crowd had looked at me like I was something they'd found on the bottom of their shoe, about 3 years of trying to prove I was worthy of a love that was never really mine. Because revenge doesn't fix anything, I said finally. It just makes more pain, and I'm tired of carrying pain around. My phone vibrated on the desk. Unknown number. Rome looked at the screen. You gonna answer that? I picked up the phone. Hello, Mr. Harris? This is David Chen from Whitmore, Chen and Associates. I'm the trustee for your grandfather's estate. I apologize for calling so late, but there's been a development regarding your trust. I looked at Rome, whose eyes had gone wide again. What kind of development? The vesting paperwork needs to be completed by Monday morning due to some tax implications. Would you be available to come in tomorrow to finalize everything? Tomorrow's Saturday. I understand, but the timing is critical. The trust needs to be fully transferred before the end of the calendar year for optimal tax treatment. If we wait until after the holidays, you could lose a significant portion to taxes. I closed my eyes. The universe's timing was either perfect or terrible. I couldn't decide which. What time? I asked. 10 a.m. if that works for you. I'll be there. Excellent. And Mr. Harris? Congratulations. Your grandfather would be very proud. He hung up. I set the phone down and looked at Rome, who was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Monday morning, you're going to be one of the richest men in the state, he said. What are you going to do first? I thought about it. About Sloane's speech tonight, about her mother's sharp smile, about the way those people had looked at me like I was nothing, about the choice between becoming someone I didn't recognize or staying true to who I'd always been. First, I said, I'm going to finish this Chinese food. Then I'm going to go home and get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll sign some papers. And Monday morning, I'll come back here and fix Mrs. Peterson's transmission like I promised. That's it? That's your grand plan? I picked up another piece of chicken. That's it. Rome shook his head, but he was smiling. You're either the most principled man I know or completely insane. Maybe both. My phone buzzed again. A text message this time from Sloan. Malik, I'm sorry about tonight. Can we talk? I stared at the words for a long moment. Three dots appeared at the bottom of the screen, disappeared, then appeared again. She was typing something else, then changing her mind. You going to answer her? Rome asked. I typed back, be well. Then I turned the phone face down on the desk and went back to my dinner. Outside, the city hummed with Friday night energy. People heading home from bars, night shift workers starting their long shifts, life moving forward like it always did. In 10 hours, I'd walk into a lawyer's office and sign papers that would change everything about my financial situation. But sitting here in my shop, eating takeout Chinese food with my best friend, I felt more like myself than I had in months. The three dots appeared and disappeared on my phone screen twice more. But Sloan never sent another message. Saturday morning came too early and too bright. I stood in my small bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror while I shaved. Same face, same hands, same man who'd gone to sleep wondering how his life had changed so completely in one night. The phone call with the trustee felt like a dream. $300 million. The number was so big it didn't feel real. It felt like play money, like something from a movie about other people's lives. I dressed in clean jeans and a button-down shirt, my standard meeting people clothes. No point in trying to look like something I wasn't. In a few hours, I'd have enough money to buy a dozen expensive suits, but I'd still be the same person who'd rather work with his hands than sit in boardroom meetings. The law office was in the financial district downtown, tucked between a bank and an investment firm. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place that made you want to whisper. I took the elevator to the 14th floor, my work boots silent on the thick carpet. David Chen was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit, handshake firm, but not trying to prove anything. His office was neat and professional, with law books lining one wall and family photos on his desk. Please, have a seat, he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. Coffee? Thanks. I accepted the cup and settled in to listen. Your grandfather was quite specific about his wishes, Chen began, opening a thick file folder. The trust was designed to ensure that his wealth went to someone who understood the value of work and wouldn't squander the family legacy. He slid a document across the desk. This is the vesting certificate. Once you sign this, the full amount transfers to your control. There are no restrictions on how you use the money, though your grandfather did include a letter with some suggestions. I looked at the paperwork, legal language that boiled down to sign here, become rich. It felt too easy. What kind of suggestions? Chen pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written on it in shaky handwriting. He wanted you to read this after the trust vested, not before. I signed the papers first. My signature looked small and ordinary next to all the official stamps and notary seals. Just like that, I went from wondering how to pay next month's rent to having enough money to buy a small country. Then, I opened my grandfather's letter. Malik, if you're reading this, it means you stuck to your guns long enough to earn what I'm leaving you. I'm proud of that. Not everyone can stay true to themselves when the world tells them they're not enough. I know you'll be tempted to use this money to prove something to people who never believed in you. Don't. The money isn't for them. It's for you to build the life you actually want, not the one you think will impress others. Stay humble, stay working, and remember that the best revenge is a life well lived. Your loving grandfather, Samuel Harris. I folded the letter and put it in my wallet. Chen was watching me with kind eyes, probably wondering if I was about to break down or start whooping with joy. I did neither. Any questions? He asked. How long do I have to decide what to do with it? He smiled. Mr. Harris, it's your money now. You have the rest of your life. I thanked him and left the office with a leather portfolio containing account information and contact numbers for financial advisors. $300 million, give or take. The number still didn't feel real. I drove back to the garage in my pickup truck, the radio playing the same classic rock station it had been playing for 5 years. Everything looked the same. The corner store where I bought my morning coffee, the apartment building where Mrs. Rodriguez always had her laundry hanging from the fire escape, the traffic light that took forever to change. But I wasn't the same. I was carrying a secret that felt heavier than any engine I'd ever lifted. Rome was already at the shop when I got there, even though we were officially closed on weekends. He was under the hood of a '92 Honda Civic, but he slid out the moment he heard my truck pull up. Well? He asked, wiping his hands on a rag. It's done, I said simply. And? And nothing. I'm still me. You're still you. This is still our shop. Rome stared at me for a long moment. Malik, you just became rich enough to buy half this neighborhood. You sure you want to act like nothing changed? I'm sure. What about Sloane? You going to tell her? I thought about her text last night, about the 3 dots that appeared and disappeared on my phone screen. No, not yet. Maybe not ever. Why not? I pulled grandfather's letter out of my wallet and handed it to him. Rome read it twice, then folded it carefully and gave it back. Smart man, he said finally. Yeah, he was. So what's the plan? You going to quit? Buy a mansion? Move somewhere fancy? I looked around the shop, at the tools we'd bought together, at the oil stains on the concrete floor, at the calendar on the wall with Mrs. Peterson's appointment circled in red ink for Monday morning. The plan is to keep living my life, I said. Maybe buy a better coffee machine for the office. Maybe give you a raise. Rome laughed. A raise? Man, you could make me a partner in a dozen shops. Is that what you want? He considered the question seriously. I want to keep fixing cars with my best friend. If that best friend happens to be sitting on a fortune now, well, that's just interesting trivia. That afternoon, I did something I'd been putting off for weeks. I called my bank and paid off the shop's equipment loans. All of them. The amount barely made a dent in my new account balance, but it felt good to know Rome, and I owned our business free and clear. Then I made another call. Prestige Property Management, a crisp voice answered. I'm calling about the Whitaker townhouse, I said. I understand the mortgage is in default. Are you interested in purchasing the property? In a manner of speaking, I'd like to arrange for a private sale through a holding company. Full asking price, cash deal, no inspection needed. There was a pause. Sir, that's a very generous offer for a property in financial distress. I'm aware. May I ask why you're interested in this particular property? I looked out the office window at the street where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to work with my hands, where I'd built something real with my best friend. Let's just say, I have an interest in keeping certain people housed, I said. But I want the sale to be completely anonymous. No one should know who the actual buyer is. We can certainly arrange that. When would you like to close? As soon as possible. I hung up and leaned back in my desk chair. In one day, I'd become rich and bought the house where the woman who'd just humiliated me was living. Grandfather would have called it either the best revenge or the worst business decision ever. I called it insurance. Sloane might not love me anymore, but she wouldn't be homeless on my watch. That wasn't about her. That was about who I wanted to be. My phone buzzed. Another text from Sloane. Please don't shut me out. I know you're angry, but we should talk. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell her everything about the money, about the house, about how her timing couldn't have been worse or better. But grandfather's letter was still fresh in my mind. The best revenge is a life well lived. I turned my phone face down and got back to work. Sunday was quiet. I went to church like I always did, sitting in the same pew I'd occupied for the past 5 years. The pastor preached about forgiveness and moving forward, and I wondered if he somehow knew I needed to hear those words. After service, I drove to a small real estate office across town and met with an agent about buying a house. Not a mansion, not some showplace to prove my wealth, just a simple craftsman house with a front porch and a garage big enough for 2 cars. It's modest for someone in your situation, the agent said carefully. She'd clearly done her homework after I'd mentioned paying cash. Modest is what I want, I told her. We wrote up an offer that afternoon. Full asking price, no contingencies, close in 2 weeks. The kind of offer that made sellers very happy and agents start calculating their commissions. Monday morning, I was back at the shop at 7 a.m., just like always. Mrs. Peterson's Buick was waiting for me, and I had her transmission rebuilt and tested by noon. She paid with a check for $847, same as she would have if I'd been worth minimum wage or $1 billion. That was the point, I realized. The money didn't change the work, didn't change the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken. It didn't change who I was when I was down on my back under a car, solving problems with my hands and my head. Rome arrived around 10 with coffee and donuts from Tessa's cafe. Tessa had included a note asking how I was doing after what happened Friday night. News traveled fast in our neighborhood. "What did you tell her?" I asked Rome. "That you're tougher than you look," he said, which is the truth. That afternoon, I got a call from the property management company. "Mr. Harris, the Whitaker townhouse sale went through. The new owners would like the current residents to know they can stay as long as needed. No rent increases, no changes to their situation." "Good," I said. "That's what we wanted. Should we let them know who arranged this?" "No, just tell them they got lucky with a generous buyer." I hung up and went back to the carburetor I was rebuilding. Outside, the afternoon was turning cold and gray, promising more winter weather. Inside the shop, it was warm and bright and filled with the sounds of honest work. 2 weeks passed. I moved into my new house with one duffel bag of clothes and a toolbox. I bought a bed, a couch, and a coffee maker. The house felt big and empty at first, but it was mine. No landlord, no rent, no wondering if I'd have enough money at the end of the month. I still went to work every morning, still fixed cars, still joked with Rome, still had lunch at Tessa's cafe when time allowed. The money sat in investment accounts, earning interest I didn't think about. It was there if I needed it, but I found I didn't need much. 3 weeks after the party, Sloane stopped texting. Her social media showed photos of her with Grant Pierce, a developer's son who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog. They were always at some event or restaurant, always smiling for the camera. I scrolled past the photos and felt nothing but a distant sadness for the person she was trying so hard to be. 4 weeks after the party, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I was under the hood of a minivan when I heard the shop's front door chime. I slid out and looked toward the office, expecting to tune to see a customer. Instead, I saw Sloane standing in the doorway, thinner than before and wearing jeans instead of her usual designer clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked younger somehow, vulnerable. "Malik," she said, "I need to talk." I wiped my hands on a shop rag and took my time standing up. 2 years had passed since the party. 2 years of learning to be wealthy without acting rich, of building a life that belonged to me instead of trying to fit into someone else's. "What can I do for you, Sloane?" I asked. She looked around the shop, at the tools, at the cars in various stages of repair, at the coffee-stained calendar on the office wall. like she was seeing it all for the first time. I need to tell you some things, she said. True things, if you'll listen. I glanced at Rome, who was pretending not to eavesdrop from the next bay over. He gave me a small nod. Your choice, his expression said. I looked back at Sloane. She was nervous, shifting from foot to foot, her hands clasped in front of her like a schoolgirl waiting to be called on. There's a cafe next door, I said finally. We can talk there. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. As we walked toward the door, I wondered what had changed in her life to bring her back to mine, and whether I was ready to hear the truth she'd come to tell. The bell above Tessa's cafe door chimed as we walked in. The lunch rush had ended an hour ago, leaving the place mostly empty except for a man reading a newspaper in the corner and two college students sharing a piece of chocolate cake. Tessa looked up from wiping down the counter, her dark eyes taking in me and Sloane with the kind of quick assessment that came from years of reading people. She'd been managing this place since I started coming here, and she'd watched my relationship with Sloane play out in stolen lunch hours and quick coffee runs. Hey Malik, she said, her voice warm but careful. The usual. 2 coffees would be good. Thanks, Tessa. She nodded and busied herself with the coffee machine while Sloane and I took the corner table by the window. The afternoon light was gray and soft, making everything look like an old photograph. Sloane sat across from me and folded her hands on the table. Up close, I could see the changes 2 years had made. She was thinner, like I'd noticed in the shop, but it wasn't the careful thinness of someone who worked out with a personal trainer. This was the kind of weight loss that came from stress and not enough money for regular meals. Her clothes were different too. The jeans were nice, but not designer. Her sweater looked like something from a regular department store. Even her jewelry was simpler, just small gold earrings and a watch I didn't recognize. You look good, she said quietly. Older, more settled. 2 years will do that. I kept my voice neutral, waiting. Tessa brought our coffees over and set them down without a word. She caught my eye for a second and raised an eyebrow. You okay? I gave her a small nod, and she retreated to give us privacy. Sloane wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was trying to warm herself from the inside. I don't know where to start. The beginning usually works. She almost smiled at that. Almost. Okay, the beginning. Malik, I need you to know something about that night at the party, about what I did. I waited. I planned it, she said, the words coming out in a rush. The speech, the public breakup. I planned it because Mother told me to. Something cold settled in my stomach. I'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was different. She told you to break up with me in front of everyone? She said if I didn't make a clean break, publicly, that she'd cut me off completely. No inheritance, no foundation work, no access to the family money. She said I needed to choose between you and my future. Sloane looked down at her coffee. And I chose wrong. I took a sip of my coffee and tasted nothing. You chose what felt safe. I chose what felt easy, she corrected. And it wasn't even that. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, standing up there and saying those words about you. But I was scared, Malik. I was scared of being cut off from everything I'd ever known. So, what changed? She was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, a city bus rumbled past, its exhaust leaving a gray cloud that drifted up toward the low sky. Everything, she said finally. Everything changed. That's when she started telling me about the 2 years since the party, about how Grant Pierce had seemed like the perfect replacement at first, handsome, wealthy, connected to all the right people, about how her mother had approved of him immediately, how the society pages had called them a perfect match. But he wasn't interested in me, Sloane continued. He was interested in what dating me could do for his business, the connections, the credibility, access to Mother's circle. When we were alone, he barely talked to me, just checked his phone and talked about deals. She told me about the engagement that happened 6 months after the party, a big, flashy proposal at a charity gala with photographers present, about how trapped she'd felt wearing his ring, smiling for pictures while dying inside. I kept thinking about you, she admitted, about how you used to listen when I talked. Really listen, not just wait for your turn to speak. Grant never did that. Neither did anyone else in that world. The engagement had lasted 8 months. That's when Grant's development company started having financial troubles. Projects fell through, investors pulled out, and suddenly he wasn't as interested in charity galas and foundation work. He broke up with me through a text message, Sloan said with a bitter laugh. Said he needed to focus on business opportunities with better potential. That should have been the end of it. But Evelyn Whitaker had invested heavily in Grant's company based on the relationship. When he left Sloan, he took the Whitaker money with him and disappeared into bankruptcy court, leaving them with nothing but worthless shares in a failed business. Mother lost almost everything, Sloan continued. The foundation, most of our investments, even the house. She'd been so sure Grant was the right choice that she put all her eggs in his basket. I felt something twist in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, but a kind of grim recognition of how pride could lead to destruction. Where is she now? Living with her sister in Florida. Blames me for everything, of course. Says I should have held on to Grant better, should have made myself more valuable to him. Sloane's voice was flat, emotionless. She still won't admit she was wrong about any of it. And you? I've been couch surfing for 6 months, working at a retail job in the mall, trying to save enough money for my own place. She looked up at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before: humility. I lost everything, Malik. Everything except the chance to tell you the truth. I set down my coffee cup and leaned back in the plastic chair. This was what she'd come to say. Not an apology exactly, but an explanation. A reckoning with the choices she'd made and where they'd led her. Why now? I asked. Why tell me this now? Because I owe you the truth. Because for 2 years I've been living with what I did to you, and I couldn't carry it anymore. She took a shaky breath. And because I need you to know that losing you was the worst part of everything that happened. Not the money, not the status. Losing you. There it was, the words she'd come to say, laid out between us like cards on a table. I looked at her across the small table. This woman I'd loved for 3 years, who'd broken my heart in front of a room full of strangers, who'd chosen security over love and lost both. She looked smaller now, more real somehow, like she'd been wearing a costume for years and had finally taken it off. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay, if none of this had happened, if Grant hadn't left you, if your mother hadn't lost her money, would you be here right now? She considered the question seriously, which I appreciated. I don't know, she said finally. I'd like to think yes, but I honestly don't know. I might have stayed trapped in that world forever, too scared to admit I'd made a mistake. It was an honest answer. Maybe the first completely honest thing she'd ever said to me. There's something you should know, I told her, about what happened after that night. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app, then turned the screen toward her. Her eyes widened as she looked at the balance. Not the full amount, but enough to make the point. I inherited money, I said simply. A lot of money. The trust vested 3 days after you broke up with me. The color drained from her face. How much? Enough to matter. Enough that your mother's foundation would have looked like pocket change. She stared at the phone screen, then looked up at me with something like horror in her eyes. You were rich. The whole time I was worried about supporting someone poor, You were going to be rich. I was going to be rich. I wasn't rich yet when you left me. But you knew. I knew. She put her hands over her face and sat that way for a long moment. When she looked up again, her eyes were wet. Oh God, Malik, what did I do? You made a choice based on the information you had, just like I did. What do you mean? I leaned forward, my elbows on the table. I chose not to tell you about the inheritance because I wanted to know if you loved me or what I might be able to give you. And I got my answer. I loved you, she said quickly. I did love you. You loved me, but you didn't trust me. You didn't trust us. When it came down to choosing between love and security, you chose security. She was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I know. I know I did, and I've regretted it every single day since. That's the thing about choices, I said gently. They're permanent. We can learn from them, but we can't take them back. We sat in silence for a while. Around us, the cafe's normal afternoon rhythm continued. The hiss of the espresso machine, the rustle of newspapers, the quiet conversations of people living their ordinary lives. Can I ask you something now? Sloane said eventually. Go ahead. What did you do? With the money, I mean. Did you buy a mansion? Travel the world? Show up everyone who ever looked down on you? I almost smiled. I bought a house, a small one. I kept working at the shop. I helped some people who needed it. That's it? That's it. She looked around the cafe, at Tessa organizing pastries behind the counter, at the worn but clean tables, at the local art hanging on the walls. You could have had anything, gone anywhere. Why stay here? Because this is my life. The people here are my people. The work I do matters whether I have money or not. I paused. And because revenge isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more yourself. Is that what this is? Revenge? I thought about it. No, this is just me living my life. Revenge would be if I'd bought your mother's foundation just to fire her, or if I'd shown up at that party with a check and made a scene. Did you think about doing those things? Sure, for about 5 minutes. Then I remembered what my grandfather taught me about the difference between power and strength. What's the difference? Power is what you can do to other people. Strength is what you can do for yourself. Tessa appeared at our table with a plate of cookies. On the house, she said with a smile, then disappeared. Again before we could thank her. Sloane picked up a chocolate chip cookie and broke it in half but didn't eat it. There's something else I need to tell you. Okay. About the house. Our house. My mother's house. The townhouse. I waited, though I had a feeling I knew what she was about to say. We should have lost it months ago. The mortgage was in default and the bank was ready to foreclose. But some investor bought it and let us stay. Anonymous buyer, paid full price. No questions asked. She looked at me steadily. That was you, wasn't it? I didn't answer directly. Does it matter? It matters to me. You kept us from being homeless even after what I did to you. I kept you from being homeless because I didn't want you to be homeless. That's not about what you did. That's about who I am. She was crying again, but quietly. Why? Why would you do that for someone who hurt you so badly? Because hurting you back wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have just made more hurt in the world. We finished our coffee in silence. Outside, the afternoon was turning toward evening, and I could see people walking past the window on their way home from work. Normal people with normal problems, carrying their own stories of love and loss and trying to figure out how to be good. What happens now? Sloane asked eventually. I don't know. What do you want to happen? I want to earn your forgiveness. I want to prove that I'm not the person who stood up at that party and threw away the best thing in my life for the approval of people who didn't even really care about me. And how do you plan to do that? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I have to figure it out. I looked at her across the table. Really looked at her. She was different now, stripped of the polish and pretense that had always surrounded her like armor. She was rawer, realer, more human. Whether that made her better was something only time would tell. I need to ask you for three things, I said finally. Anything. First, I need complete honesty. No more games, no more saying what you think I want to hear. Just the truth, even when it's ugly. Okay? Second, I need you to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to the way things were. Too much has happened. We're different people now. She nodded, though I could see the disappointment in her eyes. And third, if you're going to be in my life in any capacity, you have to be here for the right reasons. Not because you're broke and I'm not, not because you want to get back what you lost, but because you genuinely want to be a better person. I do. I want that more than anything. Then prove it. Not to me, but to yourself. Build a life that doesn't require anyone else to be smaller for you to feel big. She was quiet for a long moment, turning her coffee cup around and around in her hands. Can I see you again? She asked finally. If you're serious about the honesty thing, yes. Relief flooded her face. I am. I'm serious about all of it. Then call me next week. We'll figure out what this looks like going forward. I stood up to leave, pulling a 20 from my wallet and leaving it on the table for Tessa. Sloane stood too, and for a moment we faced each other in the fading afternoon light. Thank you, she said quietly, for listening, for the house, for not hating me. I never hated you, Sloane. I was hurt and disappointed, but I never hated you. What did you feel? I considered the question. Sad. Sad that someone I loved chose fear over love. Sad that you didn't trust us enough to fight for us. She nodded, accepting the words like medicine that tasted bitter but was necessary. I'll call you next week, she said. I'll answer. I walked back to the shop, leaving her standing outside the cafe. Rome looked up when I came through the door, grease-stained and curious. Well? He asked. She told me the truth. Finally. All of it? Enough of it. And I picked up a wrench and got back to work on the minivan. And now we'll see what she does with her second chance. Rome nodded and didn't ask any more questions. That was one of the things I appreciated about our friendship. He knew when to talk and when to just let me work through things in my head. But as I bent over the engine, I found myself thinking about Sloane's face when she'd realized I'd been rich all along, about the weight of regret in her voice when she talked about choosing wrong, about whether people could really change or if they just got better at being who they'd always been. Time would tell, I supposed. It always did. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Sloane. I got a job at the community center downtown teaching kids basic computer skills. Thought you should know I'm trying to build something that matters. Hope you're well. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, proud of you for starting somewhere that counts. Her response came immediately. Thank you for believing I can change. I didn't respond to that one. Some things were better left to time and action to prove. But sitting in my small house that evening, I found myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. Maybe it was just changing direction the way rivers do when they meet new terrain. Maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. 1 week later, Sloane called. I was under Mrs. Chen's Toyota when my phone rang, and I almost didn't answer. Rome had gone to pick up parts, leaving me alone in the shop with nothing but the radio and the satisfying work of replacing a worn clutch. Hello? Malik? It's me, Sloane. I slid out from under the car and wiped my hands on a shop rag. How are you? Good, nervous. I was wondering, would you like to get lunch? There's something I want to show you. I looked at the clock on the office wall. It was almost noon and I hadn't eaten anything since the coffee and donut Rome had brought me at 7. Where did you have in mind? Actually, I was hoping you could come to the community center. I want you to see what I'm doing here. Something in her voice made me pause. She sounded different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Okay, I said, give me the address. The Riverside Community Center was a 15-minute drive from the shop, tucked into a neighborhood that had seen better days but was trying to come back. The building was old brick with new windows, and there was a small playground out front where a handful of kids were running around during what looked like recess. I parked my truck next to a dented Honda and walked through the front doors. The lobby smelled like floor wax and hope, that particular scent of a place where people were working hard to make things better. Malik! Sloane's voice came from behind the reception desk. She was wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked more like herself than I'd seen her in years. Nice place, I said, looking around at the bulletin boards covered with announcements for job training programs and after-school activities. Come on, I want you to meet someone. She led me down a hallway lined with motivational posters and classroom doors. Through the windows, I could see adults bent over GED prep books and kids working at computer stations. Maria, Sloan called to a middle-aged Latina woman who was organizing files at a desk. I want you to meet my friend Malik. Maria looked up and smiled. She had kind eyes and the sort of no-nonsense demeanor that came from years of working with people who needed help but might not always want it. So, you're the one she's been talking about, Maria said, shaking my hand firmly. She's been working here for 2 weeks and already mentions you 3 times a day. Maria, Sloane said, her cheeks coloring slightly. What? It's true. Malik taught me this. Malik would say that. I was starting to think you were imaginary. I liked Maria immediately. All good things, I hope. Mostly, though she did say you were stubborn as a mule about accepting help from people. Sloane looked mortified. I never said that exactly. Close enough, Maria laughed. Come on, let me show you what our girl's been up to. She led us to a classroom where a dozen kids between 8 and 12 were working at computers. Some were typing slowly through what looked like basic word processing exercises, while others were working on simple coding programs that made colorful shapes move around the screen. This is our digital literacy program, Maria explained. Most of these kids don't have computers at home, so this might be their only chance to learn these skills. I watched Sloane move between the kids, helping a boy troubleshoot a coding error, showing a girl how to format a document. She was patient and encouraging, treating each question like it mattered. Miss Sloane, a girl with braided hair called out, I made my triangle turn purple like you showed me. That's fantastic, Aisha, Sloane said, genuinely excited. Now try making it bigger. Remember the command I taught you? The girl's face scrunched in concentration as she typed. When the triangle grew larger on screen, she clapped her hands in delight. She's good with them, I murmured to Maria. Better than good. Some of these kids have never had an adult outside their family take this kind of interest in what they can do. Maria lowered her voice. A lot of our volunteers come here feeling good about themselves for helping the less fortunate. Sloane's different. She came here like someone who needed to prove something to herself. I watched Sloane help another kid debug a program, her face focused and patient. This wasn't the woman who'd broken up with me at a charity gala. This wasn't even the woman who'd sat across from me in Tessa's cafe 2 weeks ago. This was someone I was just beginning to meet. How long can you stay? Sloane asked when the class ended and the kids had gone off to lunch. I've got about an hour. Want to grab sandwiches from the deli across the street? We can eat in the courtyard. The courtyard turned out to be a small concrete space between buildings with a few picnic tables and some determined looking flowers planted in raised beds. It wasn't much, but it was quiet and private. So, what do you think? Sloane asked as we unwrapped our sandwiches. About the job? It suits you. Really? You're not just being nice? I took a bite of my turkey sandwich and considered the question. When have you ever known me to just be nice? She laughed. A real laugh, not the practiced social laugh I remembered from parties. Good point. What made you choose this place? Honestly, it was the only place that would hire me without experience and references from the country club circuit. Maria took a chance on me when no one else would. She picked at her sandwich. But after the first week, I realized something. This is the first job I've ever had where I go home feeling like I actually accomplished something. What do you mean? At the foundation, we threw parties to raise money to help people we never actually met. Here, I see Aisha learn to code. I watch Miguel figure out how to format a resume. It's real in a way nothing else in my life ever was. I watched her face as she talked. There was something different there, a kind of groundedness I'd never seen before, like she'd finally found somewhere to stand. The kids seem to really respond to you. They don't care that I used to live in a townhouse or that my mother's family has been in this city for 5 generations. They just care whether I can help them figure out why their program won't run. She took a sip of her water. It's refreshing, honestly, being judged on what I can do instead of where I came from. Is that why you're doing this? To prove something? She was quiet for a moment, watching a sparrow peck at crumbs near our table. Maybe at first, but not anymore. Now I'm doing it because it matters. After lunch, she gave me a tour of the rest of the center, the job training programs, the after school tutoring, the small computer lab where adults worked on everything from basic literacy to online job applications. It was clear the place was running on a shoestring budget, but it was also clear that everyone there believed in what they were doing. We need more computers, Sloan mentioned as we walked past the lab, and the ones we have are pretty old. Maria's been applying for grants, but grants take time, right? And in the meantime, we've got a waiting list of kids who want to take the digital literacy class. I made a mental note and filed it away for later. Can I ask you something? Sloan said as we walked back toward the lobby. Sure. That day in the cafe, you said revenge was about becoming more yourself. What did you mean by that? I thought about how to explain something I was still figuring out myself. I think most people think revenge is about making someone else pay for what they did to you. But real revenge, the kind that actually heals something, is about becoming so much yourself that what they did to you doesn't matter anymore. I'm not sure I understand. You broke up with me because you thought I wasn't good enough. The revenge isn't proving I was good enough all along. The revenge is becoming so secure in who I am that your opinion of my worth doesn't have any power over me. She nodded slowly. So, you're not trying to get back at me. You're just getting back to you. Something like that. We'd reached the lobby where Maria was talking to a woman with 2 young kids about enrolling them in the after school program. I should get back to the shop, I said. Rome's probably wondering where I disappeared to. Malik? Sloane's voice stopped me at the door. Thank you for coming, for seeing this. Thank you for showing me. Would it be okay if I called you again? Maybe we could do this regularly. Not dating, she added quickly. Just friends, if that's something you'd be interested in. I looked at her standing there in the lobby of the community center, surrounded by evidence of people trying to build better lives for themselves and their families. She looked more real than she ever had in a designer dress at a charity gala. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. Over the next month, we fell into a routine. Sloan would call once or twice a week, usually to invite me to see something at the center or to grab coffee and talk. Sometimes she'd stop by the shop during her lunch break, bringing sandwiches from the deli and sitting in the office while Rome and I worked. She was different in these casual moments, more relaxed, more honest, more willing to admit when she didn't know something or when she was struggling. The polished veneer that had defined her for so long was gradually wearing away, revealing someone more interesting underneath. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told me one afternoon while we watched kids play basketball in the center's small gym, "about becoming more yourself." "Yeah? I think I've been pretending to be someone else for so long that I forgot who I actually was. Maybe I never knew in the first place. So, who are you finding out you are?" She was quiet for a moment, watching a girl sink a free throw while her teammates cheered. "Someone who likes kids, someone who doesn't need everything to be perfect all the time, someone who'd rather be useful than impressive. Those are good things to be. They're different things than I thought I wanted to be." That evening, I made a phone call. "Prestige Computing Solutions," a voice answered. "I'm interested in donating some computer equipment to a community organization. What would you recommend for a youth digital literacy program? How many stations are we talking about?" "Let's say 20. And I'd want them to be good quality, not just functional." "For 20 stations with good specs, you're looking at around $40,000, plus software licensing." "That's fine. I'd also want someone to come set everything up and provide basic tech support training for the staff." "We can absolutely arrange that. This is quite a generous donation. May I ask which organization?" "Riverside Community Center. But I want this to be completely anonymous. No press, no recognition events, nothing like that." "Of course. We handle anonymous donations all the time. When would you like the installation to take place?" "As soon as possible. And could you tell them the donation came from a foundation that wishes to remain unnamed?" "Absolutely. We'll take care of everything." I hung up and sat back in my kitchen chair, looking out the window at my small backyard. The money was just sitting there anyway, earning interest I didn't need. Better to put it to work helping kids learn skills they could actually use. My phone buzzed with a text from Sloan. Aisha finished her first real program today. She made a simple calculator that actually works. She was so proud she cried happy tears. "Thought you'd want to know." I typed back, "That's wonderful. Tell her congratulations from me." "I will. She asks about you every class. I think you have a fan." 3 days later, my phone rang while I was replacing brake pads on a minivan. "Malik!" Sloane's voice was breathless with excitement. "You're not going to believe what happened." "Try me." "Someone donated 20 brand new computers to the center. Complete setup, software, everything. Maria's crying, the kids are going crazy, and we can finally expand the program like we wanted to." "That's amazing news." The company said it was from an anonymous foundation. Can you believe that? Just when we needed it most, someone came through for these kids. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Sometimes the universe provides. I have to go. Maria wants to start planning how we'll restructure the classes to accommodate more kids. But I wanted to share the good news with someone who'd understand what this means. It means those kids are going to have opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Exactly. God, I'm so happy I could cry. After she hung up, I went back to work on the breaks, but I found myself humming an old song my grandfather used to sing while he worked in his garden. Something about planting seeds and watching them grow. The call came on a Thursday evening while I was grading myself dinner. Rome's name lit up my phone screen. "Turn on Channel 7 News," he said without preamble. "Why? What's happening?" "Just turn it on, trust me." I found the remote and clicked over to the local news station. A perfectly groomed anchor was reading from a teleprompter about a city council meeting, but that wasn't what Rome wanted me to see. Wait for it, he said through the phone. Then the story changed, and I saw a familiar face on the screen. Grant Pierce, looking significantly less polished than I remembered, was being led away from what looked like a courthouse in handcuffs. Arrested today on charges of fraud and embezzlement in connection with the collapse of Pierce Development Corporation, the anchor was saying. Prosecutors allege that Pierce used investor funds for personal expenses while lying about the status of several development projects. I turned up the volume and listened to the rest of the story. Apparently, Grant's business hadn't just failed, he'd been actively stealing from investors, including several elderly clients who'd lost their entire retirement savings. The investigation had been going on for months, and the charges were serious enough that he was looking at real prison time. Karma's a trip, isn't it? Rome said. Yeah, I said quietly. It really is. After the news ended, I sat in my kitchen thinking about justice and timing and the strange ways the universe sometimes balanced its books. Grant had hurt a lot of people, including Sloane and her mother, but seeing him in handcuffs didn't make me feel satisfied the way I'd expected it might. Mostly, I just felt sad for all the people he'd taken advantage of. My phone buzzed with a text from Sloane. I assume you saw the news about Grant. I know I should probably feel vindicated or something, but mostly I just feel relieved that he can't hurt anyone else now. I stared at the message for a long moment, struck by how much it revealed about who she was becoming. The old Sloane might have felt smug about Grant's downfall, might have seen it as proof that she'd been right to question him. This Sloane was thinking about his other victims. I typed back, justice isn't always about what we get. Sometimes it's about what we give. Her response came quickly. Is that another one of your grandfather's sayings? No, that one's mine. I like it. Hey, are you free Saturday afternoon? There's something I want to ask you about. What kind of something? The good kind, I hope. Saturday afternoon found me back at the community center, but this time there was a buzz of excitement in the air. Kids were running around more than usual, and several adults I didn't recognize were setting up folding chairs in the main room. What's all this? I asked Sloane when I found her in the computer lab, supervising the setup of what looked like a small stage. Computer showcase, she said, her face bright with excitement. The kids have been working on projects for weeks, and today they get to show them off to their families. Aisha's parents are coming, and Miguel's grandmother, and about 20 other family members. That's great. It was Maria's idea, but I think it's brilliant. These kids work so hard, and half the time their families don't really understand what they're learning here. This gives them a chance to be proud of what they've accomplished. I watched as two boys carefully connected a laptop to the projection screen, their faces serious with concentration. One of them, Miguel, I thought, noticed me watching and waved. Miss Sloane says you work on cars, he called out. That's like programming, right? Figuring out how things work and fixing them? Very much like programming, I agreed, just greasier. He grinned and went back to his setup. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Sloane said, lowering her voice. We're thinking about starting a basic automotive program next semester. Nothing fancy, just teaching kids how cars work, basic maintenance, maybe some simple repairs. Sounds like a good idea. Kids should know how to take care of things they depend on. The thing is, we'd need someone to teach it. Someone who actually knows cars and is good with kids. She looked at me meaningfully. Know anyone like that? I felt something shift in my chest. Sloane, I know it's a lot to ask, and I know you're busy with the shop, but these kids need role models who look like them, who understand where they come from. Miguel's never had a positive male figure in his life. Aisha's dad works 3 jobs and barely has time to help with homework. I looked around the room at the kids setting up their presentations, their faces bright with pride in their work. I thought about Miguel waving at me, about Aisha asking if I was coming back to see her program. What would it involve? 2 hours on Saturday mornings. Basic stuff: how engines work, how to check oil and tire pressure, maybe how to change a flat. Maria thinks we could get some used cars donated for hands on practice. And you think I'd be good at this? I think you'd be great at this. You're patient, you explain things clearly, and you don't talk down to people. She paused. Plus, you already know most of these kids' names, which means you've been paying attention even when you didn't have to. It was true. Over the past month of visits, I'd gotten to know many of the kids by name and personality. Miguel, who was quiet but brilliant with logical problems. Aisha, who asked a million questions about everything. Deshaun, who struggled with reading but had an intuitive understanding of how things fit together. Can I think about it? Of course. There's no rush. We wouldn't start until after New Year anyway. The showcase began an hour later, and I found myself genuinely impressed by what the kids had created. Simple programs, basic websites, digital art projects that showed real creativity and problem solving skills. But, more than the technical work, I was struck by the confidence with which they presented their projects to their families. These weren't kids who'd been handed opportunities on a silver platter. These were kids who'd earned every bit of knowledge they'd gained, who understood that learning something difficult was an achievement worth celebrating. What do you think? Sloan asked as we watched Aisha demonstrate her calculator program to her beaming parents. I think these kids are going to change the world, I said honestly. Some of them anyway, if they get the chance. And you want to give them that chance. I want to be part of giving them that chance. There's a difference. I looked at her, standing there in her jeans and sneakers, her face bright with genuine pride in her students' accomplishments. This was who she was when she wasn't trying to be anyone else. Someone who cared more about other people's success than her own image. Okay, I said. Okay, what? Okay, I'll teach the automotive program, 2 hours on Saturday mornings. But I have conditions. Her face lit up. Name them. First, no special treatment because we know each other. If I'm not good at this or the kids don't respond well, you fire me like any other volunteer. Deal. Second, we do this right. Real curriculum, real skills these kids can actually use, not just playing around with cars. Absolutely. And third, if any of these kids show real aptitude and interest, we help them find apprenticeships or technical programs where they can keep learning. That's what we want too. I looked around the room one more time, at kids explaining their work to proud family members, at Maria beaming like a mother watching her children graduate. Then, I guess I'm in. Sloane's smile could have powered the whole community center. Thank you, Malik. Really, this means more than you know. It means something to me, too. As the showcase wound down and families began to leave, I found myself thinking about my grandfather's letter, about the best revenge being a life well lived, about using whatever gifts you'd been given, money, skills, opportunity, to build something that mattered. Maybe this was what he'd meant, not just living well for yourself, but helping other people live well too. Driving home that evening, I called Rome to tell him about the volunteer commitment. Saturday mornings, huh? He said. Guess that means I'm opening the shop by myself those days. You mind? Mind? Man, I'm proud of you. These kids are lucky to have someone who gives a damn about their future. We'll see how good I am at teaching. You'll be fine. You taught me half of what I know about engines, and I turned out okay. That night, I sat on my front porch, despite the cold, looking up at the stars and thinking about how strange life could be. A year ago, I'd been planning a future with a woman who saw me as a liability. Now, I was planning a future that included teaching kids from my old neighborhood how to take care of themselves and the things that mattered to them. It felt like progress. Slow, sometimes painful progress, but progress nonetheless. My phone buzzed with a text from Sloan. Thank you again for saying yes. I know the kids are going to love learning from you. Sleep well. I typed back, looking forward to it. You sleep well too. Then I went inside and started making a list of everything I'd need to teach kids the basics of automotive care. It was going to be a good challenge, maybe the best kind. The video hit social media on a Tuesday night in February. I was at home, grading quiz papers from my Saturday automotive class. The kids had been learning about different types of engines when Rome called with panic in his voice. Malik, man, you need to get online right now. What's wrong? Someone posted that video from the party the night Sloan broke up with you. My stomach dropped. What video? The whole thing, man. Her speech, the crowd laughing, you walking out. It's already got 50,000 views and climbing. I set down the quiz papers and opened my laptop. It didn't take long to find it. The video was tagged with my name and Sloane's, along with hashtags about gold diggers and public humiliation. The caption read, Rich girl dumps poor boyfriend in front of everyone. Karma came for both of them eventually. I watched myself stand in that hotel ballroom 2 years ago, watch Sloane make her announcement about moving on from that burden, watch the crowd's reaction to her words. The person filming had been close enough to catch every word clearly. The comments were brutal, some people defending Sloane, others attacking her, some making racist comments about me that made my jaw clench, others expressing sympathy for both of us, but mostly, people seem to be enjoying the drama of it all, picking sides and arguing with strangers about people they'd never met. How many people have seen it? I asked Rome. About 100,000 now, and it's accelerating. Someone with a big following shared it with commentary about toxic relationships or something. I closed the laptop and rubbed my face with my hands. This was exactly what I'd been trying to avoid for 2 years, turning my personal life into public entertainment. My phone buzzed with texts, first from Tessa, asking if I was okay, then from Maria at the community center, saying she'd seen the video and hoped I knew it didn't change anyone's opinion of me there. Then from numbers I didn't recognize, probably people who'd gotten my contact info somehow and wanted to comment on my 15 minutes of unwanted fame. I turned my phone off. 20 minutes later, someone knocked on my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Sloane standing on my porch, her face red from crying and the cold. I opened the door. I figured you'd call. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters, old friends, people I haven't talked to in years. Everyone wants to know my side of the story. She looked exhausted. Can I come in? I stepped aside and let her into my living room. She sat on the edge of my couch like she was ready to run at any moment. Have you seen the comments? She asked. Some of them. They're horrible. About you, about me, about. She shook her head. I'm so sorry, Malik. I never wanted this to happen. I know you didn't. Do you know who posted it? I had a pretty good guess, but I wasn't ready to share it yet. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. Someone violated your privacy, turned your pain into entertainment. That matters. I sat down in the chair across from her. She looked smaller than usual, hunched in on herself like she was trying to disappear. What do you want to do about it? I asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to make a statement, set the record straight, tell people what really happened, what I was going through, why I made the choices I made. And the other part? The other part thinks that would just make it worse. Give people more to talk about, more ammunition to use against both of us. My phone, even though it was turned off, felt heavy in my pocket. I knew when I turned it back on, there would be dozens more messages waiting. Some supportive, some cruel, all from people who thought they had a right to an opinion about my life. I need to tell you something, I said, about who I think posted the video. Sloane looked up sharply. Who? Grant. What? How do you know? I don't know for certain. But think about it. Who else would have that footage? Who else would want to hurt both of us right now? She was quiet for a moment, processing. But he's in jail. He's out on bail pending trial, and he's looking at serious prison time. A man in that position might want to lash out at the people he blames for his situation. But I didn't do anything to him. He left me, remember? You were there when his world fell apart. Sometimes that's enough for people looking for someone to blame. Sloane stood up and started pacing my small living room. So, what do we do? Do we contact the police? Can we get the video taken down? We could try, but there are probably copies everywhere by now, and filing police reports would just create more news, more attention. So, we do nothing? We just let him humiliate us all over again? I watched her pace, her frustration and helplessness radiating off her in waves. 2 years ago, I might have felt the same way, but I'd learned some things about dignity in the meantime. We do what we've been doing, I said finally. We live our lives. We don't give him the reaction he's looking for. That's it? That's your plan? That's my plan. She stopped pacing and stared at me. Aren't you angry? Don't you want to fight back? I was angry. For about 10 minutes. Then, I remembered that my life isn't determined by what other people think about a video of my worst moment. But people will judge you. They'll make assumptions. People have been judging me and making assumptions my whole life, Sloane. This isn't new. She sat back down, looking defeated. I hate that this is happening to you because of me. This isn't happening to me because of you. This is happening to me because Grant Pierce is a petty man who wants company in his misery. Same difference. No, it's not. You made a choice 2 years ago that hurt me. Grant made a choice yesterday that's trying to hurt both of us. Those are separate things, and I'm not going to let his bad choice undo all the progress we've made. She looked up at me with something like wonder in her eyes. You really have changed. We both have. What are you going to tell the kids at the center when they ask about the video? I'd been thinking about that too. Miguel and Aisha and the others were smart enough to find the video if they went looking for it. They deserved honesty about what they'd see. The truth. That I fell in love with someone who wasn't ready for love. That we both made mistakes. That sometimes private pain becomes public entertainment, and that's unfortunate, but it doesn't change who we are today. And if they ask about me specifically, I'll tell them that people can change if they're willing to do the work, and that you're doing the work. Tears started running down her face again. I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing to be the person I want to be, regardless of what anyone else does. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you go home and get some sleep. Tomorrow we both go back to work. You teach your computer classes, I teach my automotive class, and we keep building the life we actually want instead of reacting to the life Grant Pierce wants us to have. What if the media contacts you? I won't talk to them, and I hope you won't either. I won't, I promise. After she left, I sat in my quiet house and thought about viral videos and public humiliation and the way pain could echo across years. I thought about Grant Pierce sitting somewhere, probably watching the view count climb and feeling like he'd won something. Maybe he had won something, but not anything that mattered to me. I turned my phone back on long enough to send one text to Rome. Don't engage with anyone about the video. Let it run its course. His response came immediately. Already told 3 reporters to kiss my ass. You sure you don't want to fight back? I typed, I'm sure. See you tomorrow. Then I turned the phone off again and went to bed. By Friday, The video had been viewed over 2 million times and had spawned dozens of reaction videos, think pieces about class and race in relationships, and amateur investigations into both my and Sloane's current situations. Someone had figured out where I worked and where Sloane volunteered, though thankfully no one had shown up at either place yet. The automotive class that Saturday was smaller than usual. Some parents had probably kept their kids home rather than deal with potential media attention. But the ones who came were focused and eager to learn, and I was grateful for the distraction of teaching them how to change oil. Mr. Malik? Aisha asked while we were cleaning up. My mom said there's a video about you on the internet. I'd been expecting this conversation. There is. Is it bad? It's private business that someone made public without permission. That's always bad, regardless of what the business actually is. Are you in trouble? No, I'm not in trouble. Sometimes people do things to hurt other people when they're angry or scared. The best thing to do is not let it change how you treat others. Miguel looked up from the wrench he was cleaning. My cousin says you used to date a white lady who was mean to you. I used to date someone who made some bad choices, just like I've made bad choices sometimes. People are complicated. Are you still sad about it? I considered the question seriously. Not sad anymore. Maybe a little disappointed in how some people are choosing to react to it now. But not sad. Good, Aisha said firmly. Being sad makes it hard to fix cars. I laughed despite everything. That's very true. After class, Maria pulled me aside. You okay? Really? Really, though I appreciate everyone checking on me. Some of the parents were worried about the attention this might bring to the center. I told them that your personal life has nothing to do with your work here, and that the kids adore you. Do you want me to step back for a while? Until things calm down? Absolutely not. These kids need consistency, not adults who disappear when things get complicated. She put a hand on my shoulder. Besides, you're teaching them something important about how to handle difficult situations with grace. That's worth more than any automotive lesson. That afternoon, I was under the hood of a Jeep Cherokee at the shop when Rome called my name from the office. Malik, you need to see this. I slid out and walked over to where he was staring at his computer screen. What is it? Sloane posted something on her social media about the video. He turned the screen toward me. It was a simple text post, no photos or graphics. 2 years ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I let fear and other people's expectations convince me to hurt someone who deserved nothing but love and respect. The video that's been circulating shows that moment, and I'm not proud of it. I've spent the last 2 years trying to become someone worthy of forgiveness, not because I expect it, but because it's the right thing to do. To the person I hurt, thank you for showing me what grace looks like. To everyone else, please remember that the worst moments of your life wouldn't want to be judged by the worst moments of theirs. She didn't tag you or mention you by name, Rome noted, and she turned off comments. I read the post again. It was honest without being self-serving, apologetic without being dramatic. It took responsibility without making excuses. Good for her, I said finally. That's it? That's all you have to say? What else should I say? She told the truth. That's what adults do. Rome shook his head. You're either the most evolved human being on the planet or completely dead inside. Maybe a little of both. My phone rang that evening while I was making dinner. Unknown number, but I'd been getting enough of those lately that I almost didn't answer. Hello? Malik? This is Evelyn Whitaker. I set down the spatula I'd been using to flip chicken and sat down at my kitchen table. I hadn't spoken to Sloane's mother since the night of the party. Mrs. Whitaker, I'm sure you've seen the video. I have. I suppose you think this vindicates you somehow. I don't think about it in terms of vindication. There was a pause. I'm calling because I think we should meet to discuss the situation. What situation would that be? The situation where my daughter has apparently decided to humiliate our family all over again by defending someone who's clearly been manipulating her emotions. I felt a familiar calm settle over me, the same feeling I got when someone brought me a car with multiple problems and expected me to get angry about the previous mechanic's work. Mrs. Whitaker, with respect, I don't think we have anything to discuss. Oh, but we do. You see, I've done some research since that video surfaced. I know about your little inheritance now, about how you've been playing the part of the noble poor man while sitting on a fortune. If you know about my financial situation, then you also know I've never used it to manipulate anyone. Haven't you? Haven't you been playing some sort of long game? Letting Sloan think you're just a humble mechanic while you secretly own property and make anonymous donations? That sounds like manipulation to me. I stood up and turned off the stove. This conversation was going to require my full attention. What is it you want, Mrs. Whitaker? I want you to stay away from my daughter. I want you to stop filling her head with romantic notions about redemption and forgiveness. She had a good life before she got mixed up with you again. A good life working retail and couch surfing? A life with potential. Before you came back into the picture with your charity work and your Wounded Nobility Act. There was real venom in her voice now, the kind that came from someone who'd lost everything and needed someone to blame. I haven't come back into anything, I said calmly. Sloan sought me out. Sloan apologized. Sloan is making her own choices about her life. Choices influenced by a man who's been lying to her about who he really is. I never lied to anyone about anything. Lies of omission are still lies. I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at my backyard, where the early spring light was starting to bring my neighbor's garden back to life. Mrs. Whitaker, let me save us both some time. Nothing you say is going to make me stop caring about Sloane's well-being, and nothing I say is going to convince you that I'm not the villain in your family's story. So why don't you tell me what you really want? Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was colder. I want you to understand that there are consequences to your actions. That video may have made Sloan look bad, but it also revealed some very interesting information about your circumstances. Information that certain people might find illuminating. It took me a moment to understand what she was threatening. Are you saying you're going to tell people about my inheritance? I'm saying that a man who's been deceptive about his wealth might find that wealth becoming very public knowledge, along with questions about what else he might be hiding. Go ahead. I beg your pardon? Go ahead. Tell whoever you want about my money. Put it in the newspaper if you want. I'm not ashamed of my inheritance, and I'm not ashamed of how I've chosen to use it. You think you can call my bluff? I think you're a desperate woman who's lost everything she thought mattered and is lashing out at anyone she can reach, and I think threatening me is the last card you have left to play. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. You have no idea what kind of people I know, she said finally. What kind of influence I still have in this city. You're right, I don't, but I know what kind of person I am, and that's enough. I hung up. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Sloan. Did my mother just call you? She did. Oh God, what did she say? She threatened to expose my inheritance to the media, among other things. Malik, I'm so sorry. She's been drinking since the video came out and she's been saying all kinds of crazy things about revenge and getting back at people. It's not your responsibility to manage your mother's behavior. I know, but she's going to try to hurt you. She blames you for everything that's gone wrong with our family. She can't hurt me with the truth, Sloan. And she can't hurt me with lies either, as long as the people who matter know who I really am. Are you sure? Because she knows people in the media, people with money. I'm sure. There was a long pause. Why aren't you angry? She basically just threatened to destroy your privacy. I thought about the question because getting angry would give her exactly what she wants. She wants to know she can still control something, still cause pain. I'm not going to give her that satisfaction. How do you do it? How do you stay so calm when people are actively trying to hurt you? Practice, I guess, and remembering that other people's anger is about them, not me. I need to see you. Can I come over? Of course. She arrived 30 minutes later carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the kind of grim expression that suggested she had more bad news to share. What else has happened? I asked as I let her in. Grant's lawyer called. Apparently, he's willing to tell them who hired him to record and leak the video if they'll reduce his charges. I felt my stomach clench. Someone hired him? That's what he claims. Says he got $5,000 to film the party and save the footage until someone told him when to release it. When did they tell him to release it? Tuesday, right after you announced the automotive program at the community center. The timing wasn't coincidental. Someone had waited until I was publicly connected to the center, until my reputation could potentially affect the kids I was working with, and then they'd struck. Do you think it was my mother? Sloane asked quietly. I think it was someone who wanted to cause maximum damage to both of us. So, yes, you think it was my mother. I didn't answer directly, but the truth was, I couldn't think of anyone else who had both the motivation and the resources to orchestrate something like this. What are we going to do? Sloane asked. We're going to do what we've been doing. We're going to keep living our lives. But if she hired Grant, if she's actively trying to sabotage us, then she's going to be disappointed when it doesn't work. Sloane sat down on my couch and put her head in her hands. I don't understand how everything got so twisted. 2 years ago, the worst thing in my life was losing you. Now the worst thing in my life is knowing that my own mother is trying to hurt you all over again. I sat down next to her, close enough to offer comfort, but not so close as to presume intimacy we hadn't rebuilt yet. Your mother is in pain, I said. She's lost her money, her status, her sense of control over her world. Hurting me probably feels like the only power she has left. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. But understanding why people do hurtful things makes it easier not to take those things personally. Do you ever get tired of being so reasonable? I laughed. Every day. But the alternative is spending my energy on anger and revenge, and I've got better things to do with my time. Like what? Like teaching kids how to change oil, like running a business with my best friend, like figuring out what this is between us now. She looked up at me then, and I saw something new in her expression. Not the desperation I'd seen when she first came back into my life, not the guilt and shame that had defined our early conversations. This was something steadier, something that looked like resolve. I want to confront her, she said. Sloane, I want to look her in the eye and tell her to stop. I want to make it clear that she doesn't get to keep hurting people I care about just because she's angry about her own choices. And you think that will work? No, but I think it needs to be said anyway. By me, to her. I studied her face, looking for signs of the impulsiveness that had characterized so many of her past decisions. But this felt different. This felt like someone who'd thought through the consequences and decided to act anyway. Do you want me there? I asked. Would you come? If you think it would help? I think it might. She can dismiss me as an emotional daughter making poor choices. She can't dismiss both of us as easily. I nodded. When? Tomorrow, before I lose my nerve. Okay, but we do this my way. What does that mean? It means we go there to state facts and set boundaries. We don't go there to fight or to win points or to make her admit she was wrong. We go there to make our position clear, and then we leave. Deal. The next morning, we drove to Evelyn's sister's house in my pickup truck. It was a modest ranch house in a decent neighborhood, nothing like the townhouse Evelyn had lost, but comfortable enough for someone willing to accept a smaller life. Evelyn answered the door herself, and I could immediately see the effects of stress and alcohol on her appearance. Her hair was less perfectly styled, her clothes more casual than I'd ever seen her wear, but her expression was as sharp and hostile as ever. "I should have known you'd bring your—" She looked at me with undisguised disdain. "Friend." "We need to talk, Mother," Sloane said calmly. "Oh, do we? About what? About how you've decided to humiliate the family again by defending this man?" "About how you hired Grant to release that video," Sloane replied. Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Grant's lawyer says he has records of payments made to Grant for consulting services right around the time the video was released, the same consulting company that you've used for political donations in the past." It was a bluff, but a good one. Evelyn's face went a shade paler. Even if that were true, which it's not, someone needed to remind people what kind of man you've decided to attach yourself to again. "What kind of man is that?" I asked quietly. "The kind who lies about who he is. The kind who manipulates vulnerable women with false promises and secret wealth." "Mother," Sloane said firmly, "you hired someone to publicly humiliate both of us because you're angry about your own financial situation. That's not noble or protective or justified. That's just cruel. Don't you dare lecture me about cruelty, young lady. Not when you threw away everything I sacrificed to build for this family." "You didn't build anything for the family," Sloane shot back. "You built it for your own ego. And when it collapsed because of your poor judgment about Grant, you decided everyone else was to blame." "Poor judgment. I invested in a man with breeding and connections and prospects. You're the one who chose to lower yourself." I felt the familiar calm descend again. This was the conversation I'd been expecting for 2 years. "Mrs. Whitaker," I said, "I want you to know something. I don't need Sloane to defend me from you, and I don't need you to approve of me. I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with that knowledge. Are you? Are you comfortable lying to everyone about your wealth while playing the noble working man?" "I'm comfortable with having earned everything I have through work, and with using what I've been given to help people when I can. If that's not the kind of man you want your daughter to know, that's your choice, but it's her choice too." "And what about her choice to waste her education and her breeding on charity work and community service? Is that the life you want for her?" "I want her to have whatever life makes her happy and lets her sleep peacefully at night." Evelyn laughed bitterly. How romantic and how naive. Happiness doesn't pay bills or build security or create legacy. "Neither does bitterness," Sloane said quietly. "Mother, I've spent my whole life trying to win your approval by being someone I'm not. I'm done. I'm going to live my own life and make my own choices. And if that disappoints you, I'm sorry. But I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity for your comfort anymore." "Your integrity?" Evelyn's voice rose. "You call throwing away every advantage you were born with integrity?" "I call being honest about who I am and what I care about integrity. I call working with kids who need help instead of throwing parties for people who don't integrity. I call admitting when I've made mistakes and trying to be better integrity." For the first time since we'd arrived, Evelyn looked uncertain. She looked from Sloane to me and back again, as if she was seeing us clearly for the first time. "You think you love him," she said finally, "but you don't know him, not really. I know him well enough to trust his character. I know him well enough to see how he treats people who can't do anything for him. I know him well enough to understand the difference between a good man and a man who looks good on paper. And you think that's enough? You think love and good character are enough to build a life on? I think they're a better foundation than money and status, Sloane replied. We left shortly after that. Evelyn didn't apologize or admit to hiring Grant, but she didn't deny it either. She just watched us go with the expression of someone who'd lost an argument she'd been sure she would win. How do you feel? I asked Sloane as we drove back toward town. Sad, she said honestly. Sad that she's so afraid of losing control that she'd rather be cruel than admit she was wrong. Sad that she's going to spend the rest of her life being angry about things she can't change. Do you think she'll stop? The attempts to interfere, I mean. I think she'll realize that she doesn't have as much power as she thought she did, and I think she'll get tired of fighting battles she can't win. What about us? I asked. Where do we go from here? Sloane was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city passing by outside the window. I don't know yet. I know I care about you. I know I respect who you've become and who you've always been. I know I'm not the same person who hurt you 2 years ago. But I also know that some things can't be fixed, only forgiven. And I don't know if forgiveness is the same as starting over. It was an honest answer, maybe the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. If you could go back and change what happened at the party, would you? She considered the question seriously. 2 years ago, I would have said yes immediately. Now, I think maybe everything had to happen the way it did. You had to see who I really was then, and I had to lose everything to figure out who I wanted to be now. So, no regrets? I regret hurting you. I'll always regret that. But I don't regret the person it forced me to become. That evening, I sat on my front porch again, watching the sunset paint my neighborhood in shades of gold and orange. Tomorrow, I would teach another automotive class, help more kids learn skills they could use to take care of themselves. Next week, I would work on engines and transmissions and all the mechanical problems that had solutions, if you were patient enough to find them. Sloane and I would figure out what came next between us, or we wouldn't. Either way, I'd built a life I was proud of, surrounded by people who saw me clearly and valued me honestly. My phone buzzed with a text from Rome. You see the news? Grant took a plea deal, 5 years minimum. His lawyer says the video thing was all Evelyn's idea. I typed back, good. Maybe now everyone can move on. His response came quickly. What about you and Sloane? You two moving on together or separately? I looked at the message for a long time before answering. We're moving on honestly. That's the best I can do. It was the truth. Whatever happened next, it would be built on truth about who we were, what we wanted, and what we were willing to offer each other. No more secrets, no more pretending to be people we weren't. Maybe that would be enough to build something real on. Maybe it wouldn't. But for the first time in my life, I was more interested in the building than the outcome. 3 months later, on a warm Saturday morning in late spring, I stood in the community center's parking lot watching my automotive students practice changing tires on donated cars. Miguel had gotten so good at it that he was teaching the newer kids, and Aisha had decided she wanted to be a mechanical engineer after seeing how engines worked. They're really getting it, Sloane said, appearing beside me with 2 cups of coffee from the deli across the street. They're smart kids. They just needed someone to take the time to show them. We stood in comfortable silence, watching Deshaun successfully complete his first solo oil change while his grandmother cheered from the sidelines. I have something to tell you, Sloane said eventually. Good news or bad news? Good news, I think. I got accepted to the education program at the state university, part-time, evenings and weekends, so I can keep working here. I looked at her, surprised. When did you apply? Last month, I realized that if I really want to help these kids reach their potential, I need to understand more about how learning works, how to design curriculum, how to advocate for resources. That's wonderful news. How long is the program? 3 years. But I'll have my teaching certification after 2, and then I can work on a master's degree in educational leadership. You'll be great at it. I hope so. Maria's been talking about opening a second location, maybe expanding the programs we offer. She thinks I could help run it. I watched her face as she talked, seeing the genuine excitement there. This was what she looked like when she was talking about something that mattered to her: animated, focused, full of plans and possibilities. What does this mean for us? I asked. I don't know. What do you want it to mean? Over the past 3 months, we'd been spending more time together: lunch dates, community center events, quiet evenings at my house or her small apartment. We talked about everything: our work, our goals, books we were reading, places we wanted to travel someday. But we hadn't talked about what we were building together, what we wanted from each other beyond friendship and mutual respect. I want it to mean that we keep being honest with each other, I said, about what we want, what we're afraid of, what we need from the people in our lives. And what do you want? From me, I mean. I thought about the question while watching Miguel demonstrate proper lug nut tightening technique to a new student. I want to know that you're choosing to be in my life because you genuinely want to be here, not because you're trying to prove something to yourself or anyone else. And I want to know that you trust me enough to believe I can be different than I was, she replied, that I'm not the same person who chose status over love. Do you think we can give each other those things? I think we've been giving each other those things for months now. She was right. The trust had been building slowly, through small moments and honest conversations and the way she'd stood up to her mother. Through watching her work with kids who reminded her that success wasn't about impressing other people. Through seeing how she'd chosen to use her education program acceptance, not to leave the community center for something more prestigious, but to become better at the work she'd already committed to. Can I ask you something else? I said. Always. That night at the party when you made that speech, if you could go back and handle it differently, how would you do it? I would have told my mother no. I would have taken you aside privately and explained what I was feeling, what I was afraid of. I would have asked for time to figure things out instead of making a decision based on fear. And if your mother had still threatened to cut you off, then I would have been cut off, and maybe I would have found my way to this life 2 years sooner. A cheer went up from the automotive area. Aisha had successfully diagnosed a problem with a car's alternator, something that had stumped even Miguel. Look at that, Sloane said proudly. She's going to be an amazing engineer. Yeah, she is. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For believing these kids were worth investing in. For showing me what it looks like when someone uses their advantages to lift other people up instead of just lifting themselves. Thank you for giving me the chance to do work that matters. We watched the kids finish their projects and start cleaning up their tools. In a few hours, some of them would head home to families who were proud of their new skills. Others would go to homes where no one understood what they were learning, but appreciated that they were trying to better themselves. All of them would go home knowing that at least one adult believed they were capable of more than anyone had ever told them they could be. Malik? Sloane's voice was softer now, more uncertain. Yeah? I know we've been taking things slowly, being careful about not rushing into anything or making promises we're not sure we can keep. Yeah, but I think I'm ready to stop being so careful. If you are. I turned to look at her fully. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she was holding her coffee cup, in the careful way she was watching my face for a reaction. What does that look like to you, not being so careful? It looks like admitting that I love you. Not the way I thought I loved you 3 years ago, when I was more in love with the idea of being in love than with actually knowing another person, but really loving you, who you are, how you think, what you care about, the way you make me want to be better without ever asking me to be different. The words hung in the air between us while kids laughed and called goodbye to each other in the parking lot. It looks like asking if you think you could ever love me back, she continued. The person I am now, not the person I was or the person I might become, but just me as I am, with all my mistakes and my work in progress areas and my determination to keep trying to be worthy of good things. I set down my coffee cup and took her hands in mine. They were warm and a little calloused now from working with tools and computers, from building something real instead of just managing other people's money. Sloan, I said, I think I've been loving who you are now for months. I just wasn't sure you were ready to hear it. Her face lit up like sunrise. Really? Really? So, what happens now? I looked around at the community center, at the kids heading home with new knowledge and increased confidence, at the place where we'd both learned how to be useful instead of just successful. Now, we keep doing what we've been doing, I said. We work. We help kids learn things. We have dinner together and talk about our days. We support each other's dreams and call each other out when we're being less than our best selves. That sounds wonderfully ordinary. The best lives usually are. She stepped closer and put her arms around my neck. Can I kiss you? I was hoping you'd ask. The kiss was soft and sweet and tasted like coffee and possibility. Around us, the sounds of the city continued, traffic and voices and the distant hum of people living their lives. Normal sounds for a normal Saturday morning in a normal neighborhood where two people had figured out how to love each other honestly. When we pulled apart, Sloane rested her forehead against mine. I love you, she said simply. I love you too. It wasn't the dramatic reunion or grand gesture that movies were made of. It was just two people who'd hurt each other, learning how to trust again, how to build something real on a foundation of truth and mutual respect and shared commitment to being better than they'd been before. But sitting there in my truck later, driving home through the streets of the neighborhood where I'd grown up and learned to work with my hands, I thought about my grandfather's letter again, about the best revenge being a life well lived. I thought about kids who would go home tonight knowing they could change a tire or diagnose an engine problem, about a woman who'd chosen education and service over status and approval, about a business I'd built with my best friend, and a community center where people learned skills that would serve them for the rest of their lives. It felt like revenge of the very best kind, not against anyone in particular, but against the idea that worth was determined by what other people thought of you, against the belief that love had to come with conditions or that forgiveness required forgetting. I'd built a life I was proud of. I'd found work that mattered and people who saw me clearly. I'd learned how to forgive without being naive and how to trust without being foolish. And somehow, in the middle of all that building and learning and growing, I'd found love again. Not perfect love or easy love, but real love. The kind that grew stronger under pressure instead of cracking. The kind that was interested in tomorrow as well as today. The kind that could last. My phone buzzed with a text from Rome. You and Sloan finally figure out what you're doing? I typed back, we're building something good, slowly but surely. His response made me laugh. About time. Maria owes me $20. Some things never changed. Best friends would always find ways to bet on your happiness. Kids would always be smarter than adults gave them credit for. And broken things could always be fixed if you had the right tools and enough patience. I parked in front of my small house and sat for a moment, looking at the life I'd created for myself. Simple but meaningful. Honest but not always easy. Built on work and relationships and the daily choice to be better than circumstances required. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, engines that wouldn't start, kids who struggled with new concepts, the ongoing work of loving someone who was still learning how to be loved. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, doing work that mattered, surrounded by people who knew my worth. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything.